That's about right. Let's see if I get a little more light here. That's a little better. That's not too bad. A little too far over there. There we go. Oh, anyhow. Oh, how's everybody doing? We're doing okay here. How's your back doing, little one?
Oh, okay. I mean, it's not 100%, but
Getting better each day, huh?
yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, it was a little busy this weekend, so she's still recovering. Raining today, so timing was excellent. Let's see what it's supposed to be next weekend. Massive fire breaks out deep inside Russia as Putin's pilots begin defecting to Ukraine. Sure. Let's see. Weather. Oh, it says next weekend might be damp. Thursday thunderstorms, Friday thunderstorms, Saturday rain, Sunday rain. We shall see what we shall see. Is this picture supposed to move? What picture? This picture? Oh, I am not a crook. Or something else. I don't know. Anyhow, we got some samples of that mystery dump and screened it. And, got, I don't know, probably 1,500 pounds of material or something.
Wow.
So
I actually got a notification.
Geochem nerds hang out. Are you in the right place? I don't know. And so, anyhow, Eva was also um, working on her hand panning and such, so her elbows are a little bit sore. Um, like anything else, if you don't do it very much, you wind up, you know, your muscles, tendons, and everything aren't as uh, durable as they are after a while of practice. Plus, with me just having years and years of practice, I can make it go a lot faster and more efficiently. Um, so we got those samples and got everything. Hello, Tripping. How's it going? And we got things crushed and split and samples ready to go. And um, tomorrow we'll ship them out to the assayer and see what they come back with. They've got gold in them, but I didn't even get a chance to pan the bulk samples because of the time constraints and stuff, and the weather closing is. So I have yet to do that, and I will get on that um, next chance. I think today was a bunch of paperwork, and tomorrow we got some errands to run and stuff. So I'm not sure when we'll get out to the ranch and actually do some panning. um, so anyhow, they did have some interesting rocks. First of all, one of our viewers came through town, and let's see if we can. We're trying to get the right amount of light. It's kind of tricky. Let's see what we can do here. That's not too bad. Anyhow, this is a No, I don't love paperwork, Shaggy. Trust me. This is a very common type of rock that you will find in veins and near veins and stuff. This is what's known as a breccia. It's broken rock that's then been re-cemented together. And this theoretically has gold in it. This particular one is just a one-off sample, so I'm not planning on tearing it apart. But you can see how there used to be the white quartz that got shattered by earth movement or something, and then all the spaces got filled with that iron stained quartz. And that is a fairly classic type of rock that you often find in veins or vein zones. Ugh. This is kind of heavy, so let's see how long I get. This, on the other hand, is quartz. Here you have where it's filling the void. This would be the last bit to fill. And one of these, that's probably it. I don't know. Here's an even better look at the voids, and you can see the quartz crystals down here. And that, you have these eroded areas where presumably pyrites or other sulfides dissolved out. Now I'm kind of confident, it's hard to see from there, but see the kind of 90-degree angles there and everything? That's kind of classic of pyrite cubes. There's one, there's another, that have weathered away. And so one would presume that what you had here was solutions that were depositing fairly clean quartz, and then towards the end got much more metallic mineralization in them, and we're kind of filling up the stuff at the end. Hey David, how's it going? So that is an example of a quartz that's kind of partly mineral. Now we'll see how well this shows up on the camera. This is, oh, it shows up better on the camera than in real life. This is wall rock that's been broken, and then the cracks filled with quartz. Hey, how's it going, Jason? And this is also a breccia, just much lower in quartz. And the wall rock was what got broken and then filled with quartz, instead of a quartz vein filled with a different kind of quartz. So just thought I'd show those to you, since they were kind of classic examples. And yeah, Infinity sent me some stuff to test, and hopefully I'll get to that this week. I was typing up my list of things that need to get done, and it was literally this long typed. Oh, yeah. You know, Flower Gold Wizards, you can have the weather. We have cold winters too. Not quite as cold, I don't think. But the weather's...
Is he here too?
Yeah, Jason's here.
Hi, say hi to Mrs. Wizard.
And things are a lot nicer. We had, what, 2 weekends where we had some mosquitoes of any significance, little one? That was about it. So really pretty mellow over here compared to what you have to put up with, Jason. But yeah, it's kind of nice in the summertime, and as long as you don't need to be out working in the weather in the winter, not too bad. If you got to work out in the weather during the winter, it can suck the big one, I'll tell you. It can get really unpleasantly cold. Let me turn this light back up here. But anyhow, since a lot of you are relatively new, oh my, yeah, I know, Rock. Yeah, I'm not whining. I'm just amused at the suffering some other people have to go through. Yeah, I've also heard in the farther north the mosquitoes are like insane. Um, just literally insane. Like they could bleed an elk dry in 6 hours. So yeah, now we have it pretty nice here, and we appreciate that, and we like it. Uh, haven't heard anything from Jim. PBM, huh? Rock says, when I eat peanut butter sandwiches for lunch in the bush, it's peanut butter and mosquitoes.
Yuck. I would think that would ruin the taste of the peanut butter.
I would think so. Well, I don't know. Peanut butter with blood? That'd be kind of like peanut butter rare. Hello, honey bunny. So, anyhow, that was, yeah, I talked to a guy who'd been up there one time doing work, and he said that he was looking and there was like a little shack in the distance that was brown. And as he walked over towards it, it turns out it was actually white. The brown was just mosquitoes covering it. It's like, nope, I don't think I want to go there. There's a reason they have these nets around their faces and stuff. It's not a Keith friendly environment, that's for sure. So, anyhow, I was thinking tonight I might do a little quick review on basic ore forming, and some of the more expert people can add or correct as I go along, so that the people who are relatively new can maybe get a quick review. Um, in this case, in particular, in this area, the main ore formation is here's the surface of the earth, and way down deep, you've got this magma intrusions. I know they happened over 100 million years ago, like for the boulder batholith. And the boulder batholith is like 60 to 70 miles across. And when you get that big of a mass of molten rock, it takes a long time to cool, and it cools in stages. And it does two things while it's cooling. Number one, the heat cooks this rock around it, and it changes it. It can release water. The water can grab other minerals and take them. You can have groundwater that comes down, gets heated, and goes back up. At these depths, water exists as a liquid at much higher temperatures than on the surface. And as this zone right here dissolves metallic minerals and the water comes back closer to the surface, it cools off and different minerals precipitate at different temperatures. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, oh thou experts, gold, quartz, and pyrite all tend to precipitate at about 300 degrees centigrade, if I remember correctly. I may be wrong. And so you will eat the bugs and you will like it, honey bunny. Oh yeah, I'm getting there, Rock. Is it about 300 C or is it 300 F that the gold comes out of solution? Okay. I think it was, 300 C. Okay. So what's that? Like 500 or 600 degrees Fahrenheit These are very hot water. It's got other minerals in it that help facilitate this. But the gold, quartz, and pyrite, if the only thing that's precipitating them out of solution is a drop in temperature, all precipitate at almost the same temperature, which is why you get quartz with pyrite often containing gold. Okay? So, another major source of metals is in the melt itself. As this cools down and solidifies, and some of the heavier stuff will literally solidify and settle to the bottom, but eventually it all will start solidifying. And the last stage of this process, there's water that's dissolved in the magma, and that water becomes super enriched with minerals and makes its way out. And I believe these are called magmatic waters. And as they migrate, the same kind of temperature situation will cause gold, quartz, and pyrite to do. They also have some called boiling water, or where the water stays over 300 degrees until it gets to a pressure where it now boils, and that creates a particular kind of ore deposit that people like rock can identify by looking at the minerals and the forms of the minerals. You also, in all of this too, you also have other minerals. You have copper, lead, zinc, silver. All these other things are also dissolved, and they will tend to stay dissolved longer. And so you're going to get your lead, zinc, silver, copper. Those sulfides will tend to precipitate at a lower temperature, so it tends to zone. It can go horizontally or vertically. See, if it was going this way, then you'd have like the gold here and the lead, zinc, silver out here, and that's where they will precipitate. As these solutions are percolating through the rock, obviously, interesting rock. So anyhow, where is these solutions flowing? They can flow through the rock if it's porous enough, or through cracks in the rock. Now, when this intrusion happens, this rock above it cracks as it gets heaved up. And so you're going to have these cracks which channel the water. It moves much faster in that, but you can also have porous rocks, like say a sandstone, in which case the solution may move much slower through it, but it may move through the mass of the rock instead of just the cracks. The cracks in the rock will tend to fill from the outside in, just like scaling a pipe, and the layering will change as you go. And it's a good example here. As you can see, this crack was almost filled when all of a sudden the solution started containing a lot of pyrites. Okay. And so this is not the same solution as what did that. Now, that can be on a minor scale like that, or it can be on a major scale. You've got you may have a large crack that's 10 feet of this rock and 5 feet of that rock and 2 feet of that rock. Okay, so you can have all kinds of different layering and zonation in this area here, and that's why you might find gold in one spot and a little bit of gold in another spot someplace else. That's what we have around here. we have all kinds of different mineralization, different spots, kind of intermixed to a great extent, you know, and that creates just a mishmash of metallic mineralization around here. Makes it hard to predict what's going on, but it makes it interesting to look. So that's kind of how this area around here happened. And in some places like at Butte, they had a lot more mineralization than they do at places like Helena. In some places, it would be almost exclusively gold, and other places, lead, silver, and things like that. So it all depends on the specific solutions and conditions that they're flowing through as to exactly what you find in that specific spot. And that's where it gets annoyingly complicated at times. I know there were some volcanoes around here, but most of the igneous emplacements around here were subsurface. I'd say like the Boulder batholith here goes all the way from here to Butte, you know. Um, but there were some volcanoes around here, but most of it is more intrusives instead of extrusives. There was some extrusives, but not nearly as extensive as the intrusives in this particular area. Depends on where. And so, your local mines and mineral resources department or your local geology department at a university or whatever, places like that. Yes, Elkhorn Volcanics were actual extrusives. Say you have the Boulder batholith. Let's see, what was another one? There's the Granite Butte intrusive. There's all kinds of intrusives frolicking about here. Let's see, get us a map. And take a peeky poo. Oh my goodness. Now this is just part of Montana. And you can see life gets a little complicated. Most of the pink seems to be intrusives. Let's see what the yellows are. The yellows are quaternary and tertiary sedimentary deposits. And the greens are sedimentary. Wow, they even got a thing for dredge tailings. Wow. Imagine they're pretty small on this scale. This is a big map. This is, I don't know, almost 100 miles across, I believe. But let's see. The Unionville Pluton. See, this is an intrusive here. The Scratch Gravel Hill Stock. That's just north of us here. They used to mine placer gold here by literally just scratching the surface. That's why it's called the scratch gravels. Just scrape the surface and take a looky-poo. Here's a Blackroot City Stock intrusive, the Marysville Stock, things like that. So we have a real mishmash of rock around here, but it's been heavily affected by intrusion. And that's what gives us all the minerals. So anyhow, exactly, Rock. I say this is why this is a target-rich environment. You got all those stalks, plutons, batholiths, all these intrusives everywhere around here. And that's just surface exposure there, basically. You know, there's more underneath our feet at depth, too. But that's what drives this kind of metallic mineralization. And that's, I say, because there's been all this intrusion in here. I don't know if anyone knows this. Does this have much to do with the Yellowstone hotspot or not? Because yonder, about 100 miles or so, is a super volcano. And one would think that if you had a super volcano in the vicinity, you might have a lot of magma moving underground, but I don't know. That's purely speculation on my part. Oh, so that's what's going on there. I just thought you might like to see these little show and tells here. And yeah, sooner or later, probably, David. Of course, my uh, nephew lives in Hawaii, which is worse. He lives in Oahu. Um, but yeah, over in Hawaii, the big thing is they have submarine landslides that happen every once in a while. I agree, Michael. That's the way I understand it too. The hot spot, actually, theoretically the hot spot stayed in one place, but the crust moved across it, and so it kept burning holes sequentially. Um, but yes, I do not know how much is to that. Well, kind of like Kodak. It's not a traveling volcano. It's traveling crust over a source of heat. The heat pretty much stays the same place, and then the crust travels over it over millions and millions of years. And that rising plume of hot melts its way through the crust sequentially. It melts through one spot, and then as that pretty much moves off of that, it finds another weakness and makes another spot. You know, but that's basically my understanding of how that works, and that may be where we got all the source magmas for all the mineralization around here. This is a target rich environment. Now, where it came from in Tucson, they had another um, period of volcanic activity tens of millions of years ago. And that caused most of the big copper mines down there in Tucson, um, and smaller gold mines and such. But you'll find a few big deposits and more medium sized deposits and a whole bunch of little bitty deposits. And the big mining companies are only worried about the big deposits. If it doesn't have at least this many tons or this many ounces or whatever, they really don't care. Okay. That's kind of my thought, Honey Bunny, but I have seen no expert opinion on it. The mid-sized and small companies are interested in smaller stuff. And so the smaller the target you're looking for, the more of them there are. But it may be hard to find them because not many people are interested in it. And those are not nearly as well documented in general. But there can be some very rich pockets running around. Yes, it is, Honey Bunny. Um, the big problem with Hawaii, from everybody else's standpoint, isn't so much the volcanoes; it's the submarine landslides. Um, they estimate that they've done uh, high precision sonar all around the Hawaiian Islands, and there's just these huge landslides. I remember one I mean, it's pretty high resolution in terms of you can see it quite well. If you got, Hawaii on a screen, you can see, yeah, that's a landslide, et cetera. And I remember whoever was narrating that saying, see that rock right there? And it was pretty big, it was like the biggest rock. You could see, an integral piece. That's the size of Manhattan. And the problem is when these landslides go, they create huge tsunamis. They have places on, I believe, Molokai, where they've got like seashells and coral jammed into the rocks 1,000 feet above sea level, and so that's going to be a pretty dramatic event next time it happens. And like most geological events, like the big earthquake and tsunami they're expecting in the Northwest, it can happen over a big period. And it's been, long enough now that it could happen at any time, but it could very easily. Now, in the case of the Northwest, it's probably going to happen within the next 100 years. I mean, I think the average time frame between waves is 300 years. Something like 250 years. Has already been 300 since the last one. And so we're technically overdue. In the case of the Hawaiian Islands, like about once every 100,000 years on average. There's another one in the Atlantic, Cumbre Vieja on the Canary Islands. Same sort of deal. When it lets loose, you're likely to see the East Coast get hit with a 100-foot tsunami, something like that. I mean, 50 to 100-foot tsunami, the entire East Coast at once. Hawaii goes, you're looking at 1 to 200-foot tsunami on the West Coast, from what I heard. I got a question, Rock, since you're vastly more knowledgeable than I am. How much of the metallic component of hydrothermal solutions that goes into making ore deposits, how much of the component is from the surrounding bedrock and how much is from the magma, And that's always been a question of mine. Obviously, you need subduction of oceanic crust under a continental cone to gather the gold. Would the oceanic crust contain the gold? Or would the continental crust contain most of the gold that gets liberated by the magma? That's my question. I simply don't know. But it depends on what's in the magma and what's in the crust around the magma. So you would say primarily from the melt. I know that some theories indicate that metamorphosis creates some concentration too. Okay. Yeah, that would be the northern Pacific coast over here, Oregon, Washington. It has to do with physics, which is poorly understood, but basically the mantle is like, what, rock, 2,000 feet thick, and it's basically convection. And so it's a viscous liquid. It's not as fluid as you would think it is under that pressure. And so once it gets moving, it tends to keep in that same spot. And I say it's the crust, on the other hand, is only, I think, the equivalent of the shell on an egg, and you're got a pretty good um, rough proportion. The mantle is much, 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 much thicker. So the dynamics there apparently are a lot more stable over a long period of time. As far as I know, they're not exactly sure why. Yeah, that's a good point too, honey bunny. Where you're subducting oceanic crust, you also got plenty of water in there to uh, do dissolution and mobilization. That's for sure. But yeah, it's complicated, and the average prospector doesn't need to know the details, because you're not going to be spending the kind of money like the people who pay rock have to go out there and do a lot of sampling and a lot of interpretation. You have sampling, analysis of the samples, then interpretation of the data from those samples. Well, all that takes a lot of money. We can't afford that kind of stuff. So, our basic focus on a micro scale is just, is there something valuable there? And so that's why I focus basically on, what is it? Tell me like I'm a 5-year-old, TLI 5 level of stuff. Among other things, I'm not a real expert.
ELI 5.
ELI
Explain
5.
like I'm 5.
Explain like I'm 5. Okay. I am not an expert on these things. Okay. What I am is experienced in these things. And so I can be very helpful. But people like Rock are vastly more knowledgeable and experienced. They've had a lot more training and a lot more experience. So their level of expertise is way above mine. I don't know if he could lay out a blast pattern or, run heavy equipment or whatever. I don't know. Everyone's different. I know I'll be willing to bet you, Rock, I can make better kettle corn than you. I'll bet you money on that one. But I say it's for a forum like this, I'm adequate. I'm not sure how often you get pure metal separating from the sulfides or it can crystallize out in solid form. There you go, Rock. I say, I have no idea. You seem pretty good. I've seen some engineers that are pretty good, and I've seen some engineers that are lost in la la land. you know. So you never can tell. You seem pretty down to earth, but yeah, I know I don't have the knowledge you do. Okay, and I don't take that bad either. Um, Say the modern mining companies, the ones you hear, they're looking for big mines. They're not looking for little stuff. That leaves that for us. If you do run into something big accidentally, you're out there looking for something small and you find something big, then you may very well be better off um, selling it or leasing it to a big company. I didn't say you were an engineer, Rock. You're an exploration geologist or geochemist, aren't you? Um, I've dealt with mainly mining engineers because I've always been in a pit. I haven't been in the exploration department per se. And of the ones I've seen, I understand uh, where your attitude comes from. Oh, my goodness. You know, uh, there's an old saying, degrees. First, you start with a BS. Everyone knows what BS stands for, right? Then you get to an MS, which is more of the same. And then you have PhD, which is piled higher and deeper. And so um, sometimes it takes 4 years to get your engineering degree because it takes you that long to get your head shoved that far up your ass, you know? But yeah, it is amazing how much gets done with how many incompetent people running things, you know? That's just like not only incompetent, but sometimes the whole methodology and priorities are out of whack. Like when I was working at Goldfields, I was like, where I just came from, we were using the exact same equipment you guys are basically 992 loaders and 85-ton haul trucks. And we moved an average of 165 truckloads a 10-hour shift, and you're moving 120, And it got me in trouble. The guy took me off the side and he said, Keith, you got to understand. That's a big company. It's a bureaucracy. New York gives them goals. As long as they're achieving those goals, everyone's happy. The fact that they're only doing 60 or 70% of what they could do if they really tried doesn't bother them in the slightest. Because that just means they got that much cushion if the price goes down or, and then corporate says you got to make do with less and make more happen. They know how to do it, Is there a stock nearby? Is that nearby? I'm right at the edge of the Boulder Batholith. Up yonder, there's a stock nearby, near top of the hill at Montana Bee. There's a stock nearby. Oh, I'm sure there is, though I don't know if it outcrops. I'm not even sure if it's on this map. But yeah, I'd say all this area is let's see, trying to orient myself. It doesn't have the streets on here, of course. That'd be kind of nice. Could have somewhere the section where it says in Montana. Yeah, this doesn't cover Montana Bee. But yes, there's a stock within 2 miles at top of the hill. And some of the stuff around Montana Bee is volcanics. Absolutely. We have definite intrusion of volcanic activity near both areas. Yeah, that's it. You're looking for the mineralization. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rock, but it's almost always going to be quartz and sulfides is what you'll generally find. But the other thing you have to be aware of is anytime you've got quartz veins or any kind of mineralized veins, depending upon the wall rock and whether it's been shattered or not, how porous it is and everything, you may have a much more disseminated deposit. Okay. And that is much more valuable to the big companies. They don't want to deal with little veins if they can avoid it. Big veins, maybe. If it's 50 feet across, okay. But they like the much more disseminated deposits where it's through the rock in general, whether it's porous rock that's been mineralized or fractured rock that's been fracture filled. Doesn't make a whole lot of difference to them as long as the average is high enough. So you don't want to just look at the veins. You want to look at the wall rock also. Are there signs of mineralization? Do you see the iron staining or copper staining or things like that? Or does the wall rock look pretty darn barren? If you see a lot of staining, you might want to do some analysis. If you got a large disseminated deposit, it can be worth money. It's going to probably be way too expensive for you to do it. 0.5 grams per ton. Let's see. Yeah, that's still only about a 0.015 roughly rock, if I'm not mistaken, ounces per ton. If I'm not mistaken, right around 1/100 of an ounce to 200 ounce per ton minimum grade. Oh, absolutely. They're interested in large deposits. Now, the other reason, 0.05, okay. Another reason you want to look to, maybe sell it or lease it to a big company is quite simply, in order to exploit a large resource, you need a lot of money for the permitting. Just insane. As in nowadays, if you want to put in a big pit, you're looking at, see, I wasn't as dumb as I thought I was. If you want to put in a big pit, you're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars in permitting costs. Assuming everything is reasonable. I have no idea what the Pebble mine up in Alaska has spent on permitting and environmental compliance, but I'm sure it's north of $500 million and maybe 2 or 3 times that. I have no idea. But it's a big mine. It's in a theoretically environmentally sensitive area. It's high profile. It's a salmon spawning ground for the biggest sockeye salmon fishery in the world and stuff like that. So you got lots of eyes, lots of bad, lots of PR issues and this and that. And that just drives it through, and sometimes can make it simply undoable. On the other hand, if you have a big mine paying you a crap load of money for the rights to the deposit, and by crap load I mean, if it was a big deposit, gosh, they're gonna prefer to just give you a straight fee, I would think. Disagree if you wish, Rock. But they'd rather just hand you $10 million and say walk away. We'll take care of the rest. And for $10 million, you can go fishing. I suspect that's what he's talking about here, Honey Bunny. A stock is a relatively geographically limited intrusive deposit. Okay. You got stocks on the low sides. And then a batholith would be a big one, 50 miles across. And that's a batholith. But that's what he means. Just a relatively geographically isolated intrusive body. Let's see, which stock was this one there? See, here's the Ogden Mountain stock right here. This is intrusive. This is the Dalton Mountain stock. Um, this is about a mile, to give you an idea. There's Granite Butte stock, the Marysville stock, Scratch Gravel Hills stock, and then here's the Unionville Pluton. That's going to be bigger. See how big this is? That's not a stock. But that's basically what it is. It's just an intrusive mass that came in. Stock tends to be a little smaller than a Pluton or a batholith. See? I was actually right. I was just winging it a bit there, Rock. Thank you. But yeah. Anyhow, Honey Bunny. See, this is basically a brown quartz. I mean, it's hard. But that's what he means by a brown silicate mineral. You know?
Holy shit.
And so it could be listed, Honey Bunny, simply as quartz. You know, it may not have a fancy name. It's just brown stained quartz. You know? So I'll say that the knife scratch test says all of that's quartz, both the brown and the white. But clearly there is a difference. So I say that's kind of what you do on our scale. How many minerals contain silicon oxide somewhere in their chemical makeup? Let's see.
Well, it's the most common element on the
Carry
planet.
the 2, multiply by the square root of 27. A metric shit ton?
It's literally the most common element on the planet, I believe.
I don't know, Rock. Do you actually have a number about a squillion? Yeah, pretty much. I say silicon dioxide is really common. I think it's what do you call it? I think it's more common than carbonates by a significant fraction. Which may be the second most common general type of rocks would be carbonates. Although I'm sure there's silicate carbonates too. Okay, that's a good Rock or Chris question there, Honey Bunny. Beyond my level of expertise. Oh my goodness. And we have yet to run into a grizzly bear at top of the hill, but where Lauren was working recently, and I say was working because he came into town for a bit. He's theoretically going back out, but he said that a yearling grizzly was getting into guys, I think it was garden. And I mean, this is out in the middle of nowhere sort of thing. So the guy sent a shot its general direction, not intending to hit it, and did not, but scared the bejeebers out of it. And Lauren said you could hear it running through the forest a quarter mile away, just mowing over saplings, just shattering them on impact. So that must have been rather dramatic. I'm not. Actually, I'm very much happy if we never ran into a grizzly bear on one of these camping expeditions. It would be a fine driving. And I tell you what, looking at the roads around here, a lot of people have been running into deer while driving. I saw 2 fresh ones on the way out to the ranch yesterday, little one.
Good grief.
Just from here to the yeah. Oh.
And I'll tell you, the people that don't take their roadkill just annoy me.
Well, a lot of people probably aren't set up for it. I mean, if we were to run over a deer, where would we put it? You know?
We dress it out and stick as much as we could in the freezer and call Lauren.
Well,
I bet Lauren's got a freezer room over there at the
I have
shop.
no idea. Could using magnets remove the rust or iron? Some iron minerals will get removed by magnetic fields. Yeah, those female bears with cubs can be a lot touchier than some bears. Well, around here we actually have what's known as a roadkill tag. I mean, if you run over
And
a deer,
free.
you log on to the website, basically tell them you got it, and you have to leave the entrails no closer than 200 yards to the road.
Yeah,
Is that
something
it?
along those lines.
Yeah. The whole idea is they don't have to clean up the carcass. They're happy to do that for free, you know. Rock, this is a kind of a little oddball question. I know that they upgrade hematite in the iron range to create pellets that they then feed the blast furnaces. Do you know what the upgrade process is? Is it gravity, flotation, magnetic? Any idea? Well, I know they take the somewhat marginal grade iron ore and upgrade it in some manner, but I'm not sure what it is. And that kind of processing would normally be called, in the uh, terms of art, ore dressing. You're improving the grade, but you're not creating a really high quality mineral.
What time zone are we in?
Yeah, taconite is what we're in mountain zone, little one. Mountain daylight right now.
What time is it in Eastern Standard right now?
Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight?
Eastern Standard Time. They've got Eastern Standard going on at this time of the year, I believe.
No, it's Eastern Daylight. It's summertime, daylight savings time.
Okay, so it should be what?
2 hours ahead. Right now it's 8:57 on the East Coast. Okay, Chris, that makes sense. Okay, Rock. Yeah, it also take more coal for sure. Yeah. But yeah, the taconite in the northern range, it's not a high grade iron ore, so they do an upgrade to it before sending it off to the blast furnaces. But there's a lot of it, so it works. Hello, Jean-Francois. How are you? And could be to the different oxygen environment below the water table, honey bunny. Yeah, hopefully by next week we'll have more videos. Eva did a video on what she takes with her when we're out in the field there that I need to get, what do you call it, edited and out there. And then hopefully this week we'll start doing some analysis of the big dump sample we got from the mystery dump there. Anyhow, okay, Jean-Francois. Sounds like a plan to me, although Eva wouldn't. Well, if I was just talking, Eva wouldn't mind.
What?
Jean-Francois says, great. I was across the street sweet talking a redhead 63-year-old nuclear physicist. I can't resist nuclear physicist gals. Oh.
No, you're a hot property. I gotta keep an eye on you, dude.
Yeah. So anyhow, we should have some interesting videos, and we're gonna get Eva practiced up on this stuff, and then maybe when we're up at top of the hill, we can try some loaming of all those freaking deposits. I mean, places where they have been digging holes. From large quantities of black sand. Okay. Yes, Vladimir. First of all, is it magnetic black sand? Okay. If it's magnetic black sand, then you can get a lot of it away from the gold just by using a magnet. Okay.
Send him Coulter's website.
Isn't that more like fusion rock? And so that would be one thing to do. The other thing would be to classify, that would be screen the black sand to some fairly tight screen, like 20 to 50 mesh and 50 to 100 mesh and like that, because the gold is going to have a much higher density than the black sand. I don't care what the black sand is, unless it's some kind of platinum black sand. You're going to have a much higher density. You may have flakier gold than the black sand. The black sand may be more in crystals, but you have it backwards, rock. Fission, separation, fusion is coming together. But anyhow, so if it's flaky gold, then it's going to behave differently, everything else being equal. But if it's kind of the same shape, if you've got the black sand and the gold fairly close to the size, it should be fairly easy to separate. And so that would be, one thing there is screen it to different sizes. You could also use, I've heard, what was it? White food grade rubber belting the gold tends to stick to it. And sounds good to me, Jean-Francois. So you can also use sometimes something as easy as just grease to get the gold to stick. Obviously, in the old days, they used mercury, but that's pretty toxic and most places illegal. But that there's usually a better way to do it than mercury. But first, try screening it. And then once it's screened fairly tightly, first of all, that may get rid of a lot of the black sand. If it doesn't, the black sand's now about the same size as the gold, and they'll behave differently. For volume, you could use screening or like a Whiffley table, something like that would do a good job. But screening is almost always highly beneficial if you're not doing it already. But screen it fairly tightly.
You might want to show him Coulter's YouTube. If he's got magnetics.
Yeah. And for removing magnetics, there's a place called Mining Magnets. Coulter Young does it. I've actually tested it. It does a pretty good job of removing the magnetics without getting any of the gold. Yeah, I'd screen it first. Huh, interesting rock. How deep are the scratches? Are the grooves? Rock. Um, why is it a flat copper plate? Does the actual material make a big difference, Rock? Because you could use all kinds of different devices to cut grooves into something like plexiglass or anything like that. I'm I'm pretty experienced with what I do in particular, Vladimir. But there's other people that are a lot more experienced in other things. Um, what size do you screen it to, Vladimir? Okay, so 100 mesh. If the gold goes through 100 mesh and you've got um, black sand with it, yeah, that that's pretty fine, but it should be relatively easily doable. Um, another thing, if you've screened it that fine, you might use something like a VDR mat in a low flow sluice. Um, I'm going to be doing some experiments with that here shortly. Manufacturer says it'll recover down to 300 or 400 mesh. Do you know the size of your um, the gold itself? Eva's got my pocket microscope in her backpack. They're using it this weekend. I've got a little pocket microscope I can measure with, but do you have a good idea what the size of the gold particles themselves are? Go ahead, Jean-Francois. We got a couple of conversations going. I noticed you you were starting that. Don't worry, we can do two conversations at once. You know,
Multitasking is a thing.
was there anything else in it besides the glycine, Jean-Francois? Yeah, just try different stuff, Vladimir. See what works. I once used bacon grease just to see how it worked on one ore. It did a fairly good job. Then you got to get rid of the bacon grease, which a little gasoline seemed to do okay, but yeah. So before you had the peroxide, okay, nothing happened. Then you had a peroxide and it dissolved in about half a day, huh? How much does glycine cost? Yeah, it's a good question why the copper would do such a good job. And did it have to be clean copper? $30 per 500 grams. And you're using how much? 75 grams per liter. Okay. Well, that sounds potentially doable, but the Eco Gold X would be lower cost than that. uh, interesting, Jean-Francois. Which, from the regulatory standpoint, might impress them, you know? Your teeth fillings are strange. You actually tried some, and just it makes your teeth feel weird. Interesting. I say,
Glycine is a food additive.
Yeah. Say, but this is the sort of thing that sometimes says I concluded that using glycine to sweeten my coffee might be the cause of some of my filling degradation. I don't know. Interesting.
It probably isn't the best idea then.
You've been using it for gold or using it for sweetening your coffee, Jean-Francois? And Rock, do you have any idea if the copper plates have to be clean or can they oxidize a little and work just the same? Yeah, that is an issue. Jean-Francois says, I will have to have myself tested for mercury poisoning from the glycine leached fillings. Yeah, that would be a possible hazard. Yeah, I got mercury fillings.
Yeah, but your mercury fillings are still in one piece.
Yeah, I know, but he was using glycine, and he's concerned that it might actually be leaching the mercury out of his fillings.
That would not be a good thing.
Yeah, that would not be good. You would not want to mobilize that mercury at all.
In theory, you shouldn't be able to do that.
In
practice,
theory.
It may be a different thing.
Yeah. Reality is complicated. Glycine plus asparagine dissolves gold from PC boards in less than a minute.
Really? Write that down somewhere. I need to know that kind of thing.
Okay. Kind of like a military without the water. Yeah, if you were to actually use a blower to create a smooth flow of air, it might be a little more controllable, repeatable. That's interesting. You need a straw and a patient person. I don't want patience. Patience is not my virtue. I want continuous flow operations in quantity. I wonder if it would work underwater. I mean, I know they're blowing it, but I wonder if the same physics would work in a liquid environment instead of the air. Good question. There's so many questions, so little time. I'm not going to learn everything before I die. I'm really annoyed with this. Oh. Yeah, with a straw, your throughput would suck. Well, part of the fun, your throughput would blow. Yeah. Man. Pretty much. But, if you knew it all, it'd probably get pretty boring. So I'll take the good with the bad. I mean, if every time you went fishing, you just caught fish after fish after fish, yeah, it wouldn't be much fun.
Well, it depends on what kind of fish you're catching.
Doesn't matter. If every time you put the hook in the water, you caught a fish, it would get boring pretty quick. They were all pretty happy due to hyperventilation. Well, now all you got to do is make sure it's a room full of physicists and send Jean-Francois over there. Then win-win. Exactly, Rock. I say, when you're in a third world country, humans doing that might make sense. When you're in a first world country, it'd be real expensive. Well, Jean Francois, at age 67, I probably forgot more than I can remember, too. Let's see. Let's see if I can get this. Control C. Over here. Control V. YouTube dot com /. Okay. Hit enter on that one. 7 questions in Yiddish. www.youtube.com/watch V equals FPFH. Well, that's a. Come on. Stop that. That's. Come on. Allow me to edit it. FPFH 0247BA. Okay. Let's try that. See what happens. Control C. Control V. Let's see. Video isn't available anymore. It says. Did you try that recently? Because it says it's not available anymore. I'd never fish again, yeah. Okay, so there's something weird going on here. Let's see. Get that. Control C. Over here to YouTube. Control V. Could you just leave it? /watch. Delete. Delete. Okay. Enter. Okay. Yeah, there it is. Okay, what I'll do now, Control C, is I'll post it, and then everyone else. There we go. There's the link. It's Gold Recovery with Glycine and Asparagine by Chemistry Games is the name of the channel. Yep. That's the active link right there. Okay. That may be thin plating, but it looks like a lot of it. Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, man. Yeah, a little bit tired of punching coordinates and stuff like that. I hate paperwork. That's why I could never do your job, Rock. I hate paperwork. Interesting, Jean-Francois. May have to check that out. I got a pretty busy schedule here. Hey, Chris, are you still there? Does that sound like fun? See what they got there? Oh, dearie, dearie. Lysine gold, huh? Oh, well, I need to check that one anyhow. It's still in my Chingazaruni there. That would make me wonder too, Jean-Francois. Well, I suppose that if I was a better electron herder, I could save a lot of work. But I mean, I learned how to draft as uh, as in, drafting arm and different scales and things like that. And so I tend to come about things from a little bit of a primitive uh, methodology, but I can get it done in almost any conditions, as opposed to other people that, if they lose signal, they're screwed. Yeah. I don't know, Jean-Francois. If it if it did get into his detection thing, then you'd know what the problem was. But yeah, that would concern me a bit. Oh, the goddess is moving. I'm a little crazy. Well, the world's a lot crazy, so keep it up and you might fit in. Yeah, I would too. Too much excitement. Yes, I agree. Um, a little less excitement, a little more routine would be appreciated at this time. Honey bunny. Yeah, it very well might, Jean-Francois. Thank you, John. I think it's, let's see. Let's, same one, 305. Yeah, I think it's the same one there. Yep. Oh, anyhow. So it's interesting to see what they come up with. Yeah, Jean-Francois. Yeah, exactly. It would be interesting if it turns out that some of these food additives were hazardous not inherently, but only conditionally, depending upon other factors which are not readily apparent. I'm sure there are cases like that. I know there's certain medications that you're not supposed to eat certain things with them.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you cannot eat grapefruit with. Grapefruit
Really?
reacts with a lot of medication. No idea why.
How about that, John?
Grapefruit is problematic.
So grapefruit is bad for what? With fillings?
Grapefruit will interact with a lot of medications, especially ones that govern like your blood pressure and all kinds of stuff. Grapefruit interacts with like 120 different medications. Some of them it has a synergistic effect.
Yeah, I can understand, Jean-Francois, because it's a pretty strong oxidizing agent. I can see why the body, it's like your stomach makes hydrochloric acid, which is a pretty strong acid. So your body does certain things in certain areas that that sound pretty dramatic, but are pretty benign because the body knows how to deal with it. Anyhow.
Well, our stomachs have the pH of scavengers.
Yeah.
Oh. Just saying.
I'm kind of a scavenger at times. Hydrometallurgy, Volume 152, February 2015, pages. Hydrometallurgy technical note: the leaching gold, silver, and the alloys. Huh. Let's see. I betcha. Control C. Control V. See what happens here. There it is. The leaching of gold and silver in a pH-modified glycine solution in the presence of hydrogen peroxide. Gold, silver under neutral or alkaline conditions at ambient to moderately elevated temperatures. Gold leaching rate is found to be 0.322 micromoles per meter squared, which is comparable to gold's leaching rate after 6 days in thiosulfate. Reaction rate. Gold glycinate complex was found to effectively load on carbon up to 13.2 grams per kilogram. If I'm not mistaken, 13.2 divided by 1,000, 1.3%, somewhere around like what we're getting in the what do you call it? Resins that we're getting. Okay, I've got that one saved. Let me post an actual. Oh, no, I didn't. Goodness, I forgot to grab the link. Control V. Control C. Now I'll come back here. Let's see. Let me get this. Control V. There we go. There's the link. Yeah, Rock. Of course, our live streams tend to wander a bit from time to time. But how do you tell if it's a boiling water deposit, Rock? I mean, I know that there's ways to tell whether it was boiling or not boiling, but I forget what they were. I know that, say, an expert can figure out a lot of the parameters of ore deposition by looking at some of the additional minerals and such. Okay. There's actually, I had better of that in a different rock. It's not here. But is this what you mean by the bladed I think that's quartz, but I'm not sure. Okay. These are actual quartz crystals right there. Those are little crystals. You can clearly see that they're quartz. I'm not sure what the other stuff is, but boy, it sure is fluffy. I just crushed it with my finger. Yep. See, and that's the kind of thing that rock does, is he can look at these things, and he's kind of like a mechanic. I mean, a real mechanic, not a parts changer. You take your car to it, and he just kind of listens to it, revs the engine a couple of times, puts it in gear, and says, here's the problem, because he understands what's going on in sufficient detail that things that you don't even see become, yeah, I see that rock, is very probative at his level of expertise. What do you mean by you have the entire system from the top down to the source? You mean there's a direct channel to the originating solutions? And in general, would that be down in a vertical direction, or does it oftentimes go horizontally also? Because rock is better at that question than mine. But as the hydrothermal solutions percolate through the rock, sometimes they cool faster than they lose pressure, and therefore they always stay liquid. Other times they lose pressure faster than they cool, and then they actually start boiling, just like a pressure cooker. If you take the top off, the little jiggler, it'll just start steaming like crazy. That was my thought, Rock. It's not very definitive, but generally in a downward sort of direction, or at least towards the heat source. Because where we're at there, the heat source is off to that particular heat source is off to the side. If that was the one, that would make sense. But that's exactly why people like rock are so valuable. They can look at a series of structures, samples, whatever, and figure out, okay, as we're going this direction or whatever direction, it's changing in this particular manner. And that means, the gold should be there, it should be back there, something like this. That these are not lines, these are zones. Think of it like a rainbow. Okay, so you're saying if you got boiling solution deposits, then there should be more gold deeper, since that'll be the last time that gold has a chance to come out of solution. Interesting. Say it's hard to tell what's going on when you don't have a good budget. Nothing like $250,000 to do a little exploration to help clarify the situation. Unfortunately, we don't. So we just have to make do with what we have. Are you ready to take over, little one? I need a break here, if nothing else. Yeah. So you had breccia that ran 7 grams per ton, but only in the fragments. Shaggy is chanting, Eva, Eva, Eva. Everything's doing fine, Ricky. We're having a good time. Yeah. You know, that's interesting, Rock. I don't recall seeing any of your videos recently.
Yeah, you said the same thing last week. You hadn't seen anything from Rock.
Sarah's quartz slab. Let's see, 8 days ago. No, I didn't get a notification there. 10 days ago. Yeah.
No, you haven't been getting notifications.
Yeah, I haven't been getting the notifications. So let's see. Rock Butcher subscribed. And my all. Let me unsubscribe. Okay. Let me resubscribe. Hit all again. We'll see if we get some notifications now, Rock.
Are you sure they're not just getting buried amongst your other 173,000?
Oh, it said I was still subscribed, but I have not been getting notifications. Go figure. I think if you're not monetized, they like to drop your viewers on a regular basis. Not sure. Okay, if you got the link, put it up here, and Jean-Francois probably would find it interesting also. So boiling water textures indicate you're at the top of the gold zone. Interesting. Can you post again?
Boiling water textures?
You mean in the chat, Kodak? There, I just posted something. Yeah. Here we go. Okay, we'll take a look at that after the show. Rock, thank you very much. Well, I've subscribed and then I hit the little all bell last time, like last week or whatever. Anyhow, I see Eva sitting right there, and I need to take a short break.
Howdy, folks. Hi, everybody. And by the way, I have like 6 subscriptions max as opposed to the hundreds he has. One of those subscriptions is Hard Rock University. This is the first time I have gotten a notification when something was actually going on. I normally get my notifications a day to 2 days after he posts something new. Hi, everybody. Hi, Shaggy. Hi, Kodak. Yeah, we've been subscribed, and I always have him hit the notification bell and all that happy stuff. It is bizarre how that happens. Hi, Grim. Well, this has been an absolutely, totally, and completely uneventful week, as we all know. There may have been supposedly, or was possibly going to be, a massive solar flare thing hitting the Earth, and apparently it didn't happen because we're all still here, which is fine. Just saying. Hi, Kodak.
Got postponed again?
Yeah.
Man. Lost that bet.
I mean, really now. It's just totally ridiculous how well that goes.
The Armageddon pool at the office is getting expensive.
And oh my, a copper crime ring. is the latest scandal to rock the metals world. A copper crime ring now. The history of commodities markets is littered with fraud and risk, and the opaque trade in scrap metal is no exception. But even veterans with decades of experience say they've never seen anything like the scam now rocking one of the world's top copper recyclers. Aurubis AG revealed this week it uncovered a large-scale fraud involving shipments of scrap metal it uses to feed its copper smelters, with potential losses running into the hundreds of millions of euros. The announcement sent the Hamburg-based company shares plunging and delivered a fresh blow of confidence in the global metals industry after a string of high-profile scandals, including the nickel scam that recently ensnared trader Trafigura Group. As Europe's largest copper producer, Aurubis will play a crucial role in delivering the metals needed for the push into renewable energy and electric vehicles. But just as the Trafigura case raised eyebrows in the trading world by revealing how one of the largest players missed many red flags, Aurubis' revelations will pose tough questions for the company and chief executive Roland Herrings about internal controls and processes. The company has been hit by two different and possibly connected crimes. Only one a few months ago involving the theft of precious metals residues, and then the shock revelation this week it's been paying for scrap material that didn't contain the metal it was supposed to. Well, now that's undesirable. No shit, Sherlock. This is why you test things, okay? Just saying. A spokesperson for Aurubis said it is investigating a sophisticated criminal operation involving both external suppliers and complicit employees at its main smelter in Hamburg. My memory of this industry goes back quite a long way, and I can't recall any similar incidents on this kind of scale, said Michael Lyon, who's been involved in the recycling industry for more than 50 years and is one of its most well-known figures. The very substantial sums of money involved suggest this was an extremely well-organized operation that could well have involved a web of conspiring suppliers. Aurubis has been in operation for more than a century, and traditionally it fed its smelters by sourcing a combination of copper ore and various forms of metal scrap, including electrical wiring and water pipes. However, in recent years, it's invested heavily in new production processes to extract copper and other metals from increasingly complex forms of scrap, including old circuit boards and, most recently, lithium-ion batteries.
No.
Really now. Those investments have helped make Aurubis a rare success story in the European metals industry, and the company posted a record profit last year, even as the energy crisis hammered producers of other power-intensive metals, including aluminum, zinc, and steel. Aurubis had previously forecast operating earnings before taxes of 450 million to 550 million euro, million with an M, for the 22-23 financial year, which it now no longer expects to achieve. Copper is one of the world's most important industrial commodities, and its extensive use in construction and manufacturing has made it a bellwether for global economic activity. More recently, the focus has shifted to the massive amounts of copper that will be needed to wire the shift to green energy, with some forecasters warning of the risk of shortages and price spikes. Futures prices have fallen from the record levels reached last year, but remain elevated by historic standards. The sudden announcement and scale of this scam has sent tremors through the tight-knit network of traders and scrap processors that supply Aurubis. Speaking privately, representatives at two suppliers to Aurubis and a major scrap buyer said they hadn't heard any rumors about issues with fraud at the company or in the broader market, even after the smaller scale theft of semi-processed precious metals in June left the industry on high alert. How bizarre. Very bizarre. There's still a lot of questions outstanding about how Aurubis found itself with a shortfall in metal that it says could mean damages in the low three-digit million euro range. The low three-digit million with an M, euro range. Ooh, that's gonna hurt. According to a company spokesperson, certain of its recycling suppliers appear to have manipulated details about the raw materials they delivered and have been working with employees in the sampling department. The company eventually discovered the metal was missing once the material was processed in Arubis's plant, said Angela Seidler, Vice President for Investor Relations and Corporate Communications. Suppliers typically provide an estimation of what the materials contain. Arubis conducts a visual inspection of the shipment it receives, and the lab analyzes the metal content before paying firms on that basis. The visual inspections, while they sound crude, can actually prove very effective in identifying subpar batches of scrap before they enter the smelting system, and regularly involve 4 or 5 employees, according to people familiar with the industry's practices who ask not to be identified because they aren't authorized to speak publicly. Incoming cargoes are routinely tested chemically as well, but the technical challenges in sampling varied batches of scrap mean visual inspections can be more reliable. However, that only holds true for the more traditional forms of scrap. Visual inspections are much more difficult when it comes to more complex material Arubis has recently been expanding into. For example, ground up granules derived from waste electronics that can contain a mix of copper and other valuable metals like gold and palladium. For those materials, smelters rely more heavily on sampling and chemical inspection, and while the process itself is very precise, it creates a risk that complicit employees could overstate the value of the material, people said, emphasizing they're speaking in general terms. Yeah, totally general terms. Absolutely generic, almost hypothetical, except that it happened. So it's not hypothetical in this case. Oh well. The high value of the precious metals also mean that large losses could theoretically rack up more quickly and on smaller quantities of material. Arubis' Seidler confirmed the fraud was focused on particular types of scrap, but declined to comment further. The company expects to digest the impact of the losses during the current financial year and doesn't expect an impact on its expansion plans or strategy, she said. Interesting. The company has notified the police, well, one would hope, and will now examine whether it can make a claim under a fidelity insurance policy. It's also been assisting the police and the public prosecutor's office with the theft that occurred earlier this year, said Seidler. It appears to be separate from the incident in June. Well, yeah, okay. You really want to think that way? Fine. But it's too early to say whether or not the cases are interlinked. Oh, really now? Okay, fine. In that incident, they stole high value precious metal bearing intermediates that are generated during the refining process, and it takes a certain knowledge and access to processing equipment to treat these materials. The people involved in that are currently in custody awaiting trial. Well, now, interestingly enough, the goddess has been thinking a lot about recycling lately. Because while everyone else has been ignoring the emanations from the ether and the indications that the world is really, really kind of going to shit at the moment, the goddess tends not to ignore such things. So the goddess is going to be spending this winter in chemical recovery, amongst other things, and figuring out how to create a nice circular system for us to work within, because a lot of the shit that we use is about to go up in price again real soon. As a matter of fact, the goddess has been hearing very disturbing things about the prices of a whole lot of chemicals and chemical feedstocks, etc., that pretty much power the entire world. The price sheets are beginning to roll out of all the companies that supply these things for price increases coming in January, and it's looking really bad. So, there has always been some small level of scammery that happens in the recycling industry. This is why you'll see states, for instance, passing regulations that when you go to turn in copper wire scrap, they have to have your photo ID and all your information. And if you try to turn in too much at one time, they tend to get a little bit suspicious. So, yeah, theft in the recycling industry is not new. This type of organized large scale theft is quite fascinating. To me, the fact that this company, the oldest, best, and brightest, and most successful in the recycling business, everybody knows them, managed to get themselves scammed in two absolutely interrelated, the goddess would bet a lot on that one, absolutely interrelated theft patterns in the same year really shows something about the level of complacency that you have at a certain industrial level. While you've got small recyclers here in Helena and the city of Helena and the state of Montana worried about somebody like the goddess possibly turning in 2 pounds of illegal copper wire, apparently the big guys are so lax in their process control that they're now looking at a several hundred million with an M euro loss this year. And they have to be wondering at this point, how long this has actually been going on. Because I'll tell you right now, the goddess does not have a criminal mind. The goddess just happens to be a very smart person. If the goddess were in that position and the goddess wanted to steal things, the figures would be off by a 0.5% or 0.25% over a period of years and years and years and years. Because there's always going to be some statistical variations someplace, especially because of scrap. And yeah, that means sometimes the goddess wouldn't be getting a paycheck in terms of the illegal stuff. But other times would more than make up for it. So the goddess has to wonder just how long these guys have been doing this. Because the goddess would theorize that what may have happened here and what they may discover over time and never tell anybody is this started out as a little trickle. And the people involved in this saw that it was going on days, weeks, months, or maybe years, and they weren't getting caught. So they kept moving up a little bit in their ordinary waste stream. And then Arubis brings in this brand new waste stream, this brand new stream of materials, which means ramping up a whole bunch of new processes, ramping up a whole bunch of new procedures. There will be more variance in results and more variance in figures and data in this circumstance. With more variance and a new system and a new stream of material coming online, you had a lot of opportunity to make a big score. And they dang well took it. The goddess sincerely hopes that they receive the full penalties of law, whatever those may be. The goddess is in favor of dismemberment, but that's just me. Just saying, Kodak. That happens a lot down in Tucson.
What?
That scrap buyers that get caught doing shady things end up staying in business anyway. Jean-Francois, actually, I believe I've got someplace a method stored to make nitric acid out of potassium nitrate that I'm going to be examining. And yeah, Jean-Francois, a lot of places here in the United States, depending on where you are, will ask for your ID to buy your scrap, depending on what the scrap is, too.
Over in Tucson, they would take a picture of your ID.
Yeah. Exactly. They take a picture over in Tucson, and if they see you coming in more than like once or twice a month, they will get shirty with you. They will give you all kinds of issues because they have to worry. They went through a thing the last time copper peaked down there where a lot of homeless people and other people were breaking into vacant houses and breaking into construction sites and making off with hundreds and hundreds of pounds of copper wire. It was ridiculous. Just ridiculous. And speaking of scandals related to the money field and related to the metals field, as we all know, our dear friends at JP Morgan Chase are now back in the business of manipulating the precious metals market. Of course they are. Despite the fact that 3 of their employees recently actually got some jail time for manipulating the precious metals market, and they paid another fine, which, unless the goddesses miscount, means the next bank that should be paying a fine should be Wells Fargo. They may get a pass because Wells Fargo is a little bank. They may be paying a fine that's smaller for something else. In which case, B of A will end up paying a fine for precious metals manipulation. They pass this back and forth, It distributes the risk pool and the costs of doing business in this manner. Well, this leads us to another bank, the HSBC, the big international Hong Kong bank that's part of the British Empire and is the international bank of choice for arms dealers, drug dealers, and human traffickers. Okay. Well, you may remember Jeffrey Epstein, the dude that unfortunately somehow managed to commit suicide and then pretty darnly near ridiculously difficult position to do so, who was a purveyor of soiled doves, immature soiled doves. Okay. Y'all can look up the term soiled doves if you're not familiar with it. He ran his coterie, his dove cote of soiled doves, on Epstein Island, a little tiny island in the middle of the Caribbean. The goddess has a couple of questions here. With all his international connections, why in the world did Jeffrey Epstein decide to finance and run his banking business for his dovecote through JP Morgan Chase rather than HSBC? HSBC might have been a little insulted by that because from what we're finding out now, JP Morgan Chase, Epstein was a pretty damn big customer of theirs. The only business he did through them involved his dovecote. And it was to the tune of, after he conveniently and unfortunately died, JP Morgan decided to cover their nether regions and try to salvage something from their illegal activity by logging and turning over to the feds the logs of over 1 billion with a B dollars in suspicious transactions that they had undertaken for Mr. Epstein, the dove seller.
I read it too.
Yeah. The goddess has to wonder what HSBC did to piss off Mr. Epstein. The goddess also has to wonder whether this is the only customer of JP Morgan's outside of their metals manipulation criminal syndicate that is involved in unsavory activities. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Well, if it weren't for double standards, bankers would have no standards at all. They're just like leftists. Anyway, that's the way I go. Okay? Mm-hmm. That is what is going on there. Our dear friends JP Morgan may be in some more trouble outside of their usual metals manipulation. The goddess is not going to take any bets as to how long it will be before JP Morgan starts manipulating the COMEX metals situation again in terms of actual prices. It should be fairly interesting. I mean, we all know what that's going to be like by now. Just saying. But that is what is going on with a certain bank. Now, mind you, that's not the only bank that is misbehaving these days. It should be noted that a few customers over there at the Chase consumer part of JP Morgan are less than happy with their banking services these days. Gee, the goddess has to wonder why. Right up there with the usual nonsense that Wells Fargo pulls, and B of A is no better. So the goddess will once again gently remind people, unbank thyself lest thy fiat go poof. If you really want to use a bank, look for a nice small in-state bank. Against a 3% inflation target. Notice a 3% inflation target, not a 2. I think we're seeing a little bit of mission creep going on here. Just speculating here. Because 3 years ago, before the related COVID and supply chain collapse and everything else that has happened in the last 3 years, the Fed was boasting proudly about having a 2% inflation target. Never mind that anyone with any common sense knows exactly what that means. It's a self-tax on every single man, woman, and child in this country to the tune of 2% minimum. Okay? We all know this. Or we should. We don't, because we've been deliberately miseducated. Well, apparently we're now aiming for a 3% target. Somewhere an extra percent jumped in there. Inflation, I guess. Just saying. The aimless drift of economic policy continues as otherwise sensible economists, the goddess would take exception to that description, push for the Federal Reserve to raise the inflation target to 3%. The goddess has been expecting this because she noticed as long ago as 11 months ago little side media places that the powers that be used to begin testing and floating ideas in the Gestalt started talking about the fact that more inflation is actually a good thing and 3% is a better target than 2. So the goddess has been waiting to see how long it would take them to get there. Okay? This will supposedly provide all of the benefits of the Fed's current 2% target without incurring the costs, reduced growth, and higher unemployment of driving inflation down further. Even apart from the naive Keynesianism implied in this view, there are still several problems, any one of which sinks the argument for a higher target. There are welfare costs to higher inflation. When the dollar depreciates faster, people try to reduce their cash holdings, but economizing on liquidity is itself costly. As Milton Friedman argued, it results in fewer transactions and correspondingly fewer gains from trade. And if you don't believe that, if you dig deep enough on the Fed, you can still find the economic volatility numbers. They look worse than 1928. In fact, they look worse than 1930, which was like a nadir. It was a low in the whole thing, okay? It's really not looking good right now. The cost incurred by each of us is very small. Multiply it by 330 million, however, and it don't look so trivial. The second cost related to the first stems from the redistributive nature of policy change. Think about the millions of people with long-term debt contracts, such as banks and mortgage holders. Between the two, the goddess has more sympathy for mortgage holders. Raising the inflation target redistributes wealth from creditors to debtors. The longer the duration of the debt contract, the greater the transfer. By itself, a transfer of resources is neither a cost nor a benefit to society. The problem is all the resources people would use up to minimize the damage to their own net worth, as well as precautionary actions taken to avoid similar redistributions in the future. We already spend far too much time, money, and effort watching the Fed. Raising the inflation target would waste even more. The third cost is significantly larger than the first two. Many tax rates are not indexed to inflation. Capital gains taxes, for instance, are denominated in nominal dollars. Higher inflation means higher asset values, which will push owners of capital into higher tax brackets. Even if real asset values are decreasing, owners of capital will have to pay greater taxes on nominal price increases. This creates strong disincentives to invest and hence create additional wealth. Well, no shit, Sherlock. When you punish success, you cannot expect people to want to be successful. It's quite simple. Furthermore, it means Uncle Sam's share of the economic pie will increase in real inflation-adjusted terms. More wealth will be allocated to fundamentally unproductive uses. Government is a fundamentally unproductive use in general. This is a needless drag on growth, but the largest cost to a 3% inflation target is diminished Fed credibility. The Fed has zero credibility. The Fed should have credibility in negative numbers. The goddess is actually a fan of this because the sooner the rest of the world sees the Fed with zero credibility, the sooner we can try to make them go away. Just saying. The central bank would essentially admit to markets it's unwilling to do the hard work to return inflation to its previously adopted target. That would tarnish the Fed's reputation. The Fed's reputation, in the eyes of anyone with more common sense than a doorknob and an IQ higher than their underwear size, is already beyond irreparable. Prostitutes and megachurch preachers on late night TV have more credibility and better reputations than the Fed. So do quite a few drug dealers. Okay, just saying. If the central bank can't be trusted to hit a 2% target, why is a 3% target any more believable? After the next crisis, and given how bad the Fed is at its job, there will certainly be one. Will the Fed acquiesce to a 3.5% or a 4% target? What about the crisis after that? There's no end to this ratchet. The Fed's hard-won reputation as a guarantor of nominal stability would be lost, perhaps forever. The goddess would like to know in what parallel universe that sentence actually rings true. For a couple of reasons. The Fed has no hard-won reputation amongst anybody who actually reads the numbers as a guarantor of nominal stability, considering that in just the 5 decades, give or take, that the goddess has been alive, the financial world has been destabilized multiple times. Okay? We need to stop even acting as though the Fed is legitimate. The goddess will be so happy when the critics of the Fed finally start using the language that needs to be used and call them what they are. A criminal cartel extortionate arm of the United States government that is entirely unconstitutional, entirely illegitimate, usually operates illegally, and needs to go away. Period. End of story. There is no good reason to accept a higher inflation target. All of the arguments for it rely on dark age macroeconomics, which should have stayed buried with the stagflation of the 1970s. If the Fed can really make such an elementary error and get away with it, a major prudential reason for keeping it around would no longer hold. A Fed that willingly accedes to the dollar depreciation racket is too dangerous to keep around. Well, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Fed need to go bye-bye. Just saying. Fed need to go bye-bye. But that is where we are on that one. And for those who pay attention to markets and the gold and silver prices, gold was at $935.60. $1,935.60. Not bad. Silver at $23.85. Platinum at $949. Palladium at $1,188. And rhodium is down in the toilet at $3,450. Holy guacamole. God, I should be out collecting rhodium right about now. It'll go up again. You know. Just saying, it'll go up again. So at the moment, gold and silver are still on sale. which is why you got to back up the truck. You might also be interested in knowing that California, Sacramento, California, ranks the second dirtiest city in America. Only Baltimore is dirtier than California's state capital in sanitation-related 311 complaints. That.
311?
Apparently, yeah. And the COVID warlord Fauci jibber-jabbered incoherently about forced masking on CNN the other day. Just saying. There are other things going on that are on Zero Hedge, if anybody wants to look there. And yes, the next auto repossession wave could involve robots doing the work for banks. In case you haven't noticed, the car lots are beginning to fill up again. They're not filling up in my area with brand new cars, new model year. They're filling up with a whole lot of used cars, though. While it's not a number that people are discussing very much, there is a growing swell of automotive repossessions coming on the heels of all those people that bought overpriced vehicles at ridiculous interest rates during the COVID madness and post-COVID madness. There's also a growing wave of evictions. And yes, those people that have student loans are actually going to have to start paying them again after 3 years. This could get a little bit sketchy. Just saying. Other than that, this has been a blessedly quiet news week. I mean, if you can overlook the continuing coup business in Niger and the coup business in Gabon and the politicians in South Africa calling for genocide at political rallies and chanting about death to certain types of farmers. If you want to overlook the riots by illegal migrants in various Scandinavian countries and the one in Israel that resulted in quite a significant number of police officers getting injured and some people dying, of everybody involved in that migrant kerfluffle in multiple countries, Benjamin Netanyahu is the only one that's doing anything reasonable. Apparently, what happened in Israel the other day, and the goddess has yet to figure this one out, Israel became the inadvertent host to a large number of Eritreans. Apparently, Eritrea is actually a thing. Who thunk it? Well, anyway, Israel became the involuntary host to a large number of random Eritreans. And apparently, some of these Eritreans who came as political refugees fleeing political persecution were in favor of the bloodthirsty, corrupt dictatorship that is currently running Eritrea. The other group of refugees were opposed to the same bloodthirsty dictatorship that is currently running Eritrea. This led to an argument that involved lots of sticks, clubs, rocks, destruction and looting of various businesses and some community facilities in Israel, and the calling out of a lot of cops and people getting injured and people dying. And Benjamin Netanyahu and his government pointed out the logical question that no European country is asking, and America isn't asking either. You're sitting here trying to claim political asylum, yet you are fighting in support of the bloodthirsty, corrupt dictatorship that you apparently fled because you're afraid for your life. Oh no, that don't work in Israel. That may work in all of Europe because Europe is idiotic. That may work in America because America is idiotic. That may work in Canada because, well, SOX is really idiotic. but it don't work in Israel. So Benjamin Netanyahu told the UN that he's going to ship all of these Eritreans and a whole bunch of other illegal immigrants that have shown up to other countries in Europe and elsewhere. And he is going to go back to erecting his walls and his fences at an increased pace. And he's going to wall the entire freaking country because he said otherwise, Israel, as a nation state and an ethno state of Judaism, is going to cease to exist. These people are a problem. Now, bear in mind, this is probably going to get Israel a whole lot more divest and sanction things being yelled at by liberals because it's like racist and all that stuff. Okay. Also, bear in mind that the entire nation of Israel is, I believe, slightly smaller than New Jersey. A lot better looking than New Jersey, probably, but slightly smaller than New Jersey. It's not that big a place. So it's pretty easy to put a wall around it. It is interesting to note that just about every European nation has politicians who are willing to admit that the asylum system is effectively broken. That many, many people who are claiming to be seeking asylum have no need for actual asylum at all. They ain't refugees at all. They're economic migrants illegally looking to move to greener pastures. And that especially happens to be true in the United States. And all this movement of people is actually being funded by non-government organizations because for them it's an absolute cash cow. It's being encouraged by governments because for them it's an absolute cash cow. It's good for everybody except the people that live in a particular place. So kudos to Netanyahu for calling it like it is and planning to boot these people out and put up a wall to make sure that the only people who actually come in are people who genuinely should come in, which in the case of Israel happens to be Jewish people making aliyat from elsewhere in the world. Okay? And the goddess totally approves of that idea. And yeah, they're all WEF stooges. It's just absolutely ridiculous what is going on. But that is where we are today. There has been zero news about the BRICS meeting in the real media, the mainstream media, I should say, which doesn't surprise me because the mainstream media has discovered that the easiest way to make sure that things don't upset the apple cart is to not talk about them at all. The amount of news that is just simply being memory holed is getting pretty damn staggering. The goddess is quite impressed with their ability to memory hold shit. Makes it a lot harder for those of us who are watching things to figure out where things are. Key with these people, anything they're not talking about or they're deliberately ignoring is the thing you should be looking at. Because otherwise, they're probably lying anyway. They always are. The de-dollarization is continuing to move apace. There are more economic reports coming out here and there that are not being discussed on media that show on paper, at least, that, yeah, a lot more trade is happening between India and other nations in rupees. A lot more trade is happening between BRICS nations in general in yuan and renminbi, the manufactured fake thing that they made. A lot more de-dollarization is going to happen. And in the middle of it all, we have the great green push and all its random lunacy, which is, like the migrant issue, another cash cow. That is all it is. The goddess finds it quite interesting that dude back there watches some really cool guy from Australia, I believe it is.
John Kerrigan or something.
John Kerrigan or something like that, who refers to that latest and not the only one cargo ship full of EVs that became the Dutch oven, the SS Dutch oven. And he was listening to another person today. Both of these people are talking about the unsafe aspects of EVs, the lack of regulation of EVs, the fact that there's no effective firefighting strategy for these battery meltdowns, these runaway reactions, I believe they call them, etc.
Thermal excursion, I think.
Yeah, thermal excursion, that's the word. But both of these otherwise sane, reasonable individuals will still say they support EVs and that EVs have a place in the world. Well, the goddess is going to make it official here after doing yet more study on this issue. Thanks to multiple ships burning up and sinking over a period of several years, and electric bicycles actually killing a dude in New York recently, and a few other things, the goddess will state again A. The Great Green Agenda, as it sits right now, is an absolute cash cow, a cash grab, and a power transfer. That's all it is. It is not green in any way, shape, or form. It was never meant to be green in any way, shape, or form. It's a bright, shiny object designed to attract idiots. Okay? Number two, nothing about these EVs or the wind turbines or the solar panels is moral or ethical or green at this point. They cannot be recycled effectively and safely. The materials for them are not being mined safely in an environmentally conscious manner in proper conditions. They're being mined by enslaved, exploited people in third world shitholes, which is like really rude and disgusting and pisses the goddess off. Okay? Flat out right there. That's wrong in every single direction. While the goddess can think of a very tiny, very limited case use of places where an electric vehicle might be absolutely purpose built and great for the job it's doing. Golf carts, exactly. The circumstances are small enough that anyone who is saying EVs have just as much a place in the world as internal combustion engines is so full of shit their eyes are brown. Period. Okay? If they get any more full of shit, then they will be accused of wearing blackface. Because it won't just be their eyes that will be brown. All of this crap is not a good thing. If you want to go green, go nuclear. If you want to go green, learn to live a frugal, minimalist lifestyle like our pre-industrial era ancestors. Okay? If you want to go green, that is what you do. You do not go vegan. Vegans are mentally disturbed anyway. You do not buy electric vehicles and cover your roof with solar panels and hook yourself up to the nearest wind turbine. You don't even support any of that shit because you have no room at all to want to boycott Coca-Cola for donating to the Clinton Foundation multiple times and donating to trans activist groups, or boycotting Target for aiming transgender and mature themed sexual items at young children in their stores, or boycotting Bud Light because Bud Light isn't even really a beer in any civilized corner of the world. And, the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing. And then not boycott all of your tech, because guaranteed your tech has a lot dirtier provenance than any of that other shit does. Okay? In every respect. So, flaming hypocrisy aside, scientifically speaking, the Great Green Revolution is ridiculous at this point. Environmentally speaking, the Great Green Revolution is about as ungreen as you can get. Logically speaking, the Great Green Revolution, if they even manage to pull off a small percentage of it, is going to reduce the vast majority of the world into a state of abject poverty and misery that has not been known for 400 or 500 years or so, which is probably going to piss off a whole lot of people. Okay? And again, if you want to go green, every single one of us should be going green by practicing frugality, by practicing minimalism, by practicing reducing your individual carbon footprint, which is really not all that hard to do. You just get poor like us or just don't buy shit other than gold and silver. Because gold and silver are holding steady despite all the ridiculous attempts to make them go away. Gold and silver are growing in popularity. Among the signs of that, we're seeing more advertisements for them on Twitter. We're seeing more advertisements for them on various YouTube channels that are outside of our industry. I'm seeing more articles about them. I am seeing more and more pundits and idiots claiming that only cavemen, boomers, and financially illiterate yo-yos buy gold or silver, which is a great sign as far as I'm concerned. So it's on sale. Unbank thyself, lest thy fiat go poof. And when you unbank yourself, buy some more gold and silver. Well, actually, buy some more silver and then get some of that stupid yellow stuff if you feel like it, because it is kind of pretty. Bye-bye.
Oh.
And the goddess predicts there will be a great increase in copper theft and copper scams going forward with all this shit going on.
It would be nice if Eva would just relax a little and tell us what she really feels, huh?
Oh, you couldn't handle the goddess when the goddess is really telling the truth.
Anyhow, so let's say it would be just nice if people would do the math first. Politicians apparently don't know how to do math. Oh yeah, honey bunny. I've seen electric shovels, and like one that I really liked was they're using diesel electric haul trucks with what they call trolley assist. So for those who don't know, a diesel electric truck, when you're trying to accelerate or go uphill, the engine drives a generator which pushes wheel motors. When you're going downhill, the wheel motors turn into generators and they run something called the toaster, which is just a giant heating element designed to get rid of the excess heat, just dissipate that energy. However, if you put a trolley system on it, the trucks going downhill can generate electricity to help drive the trucks that are going uphill. And I think it reduces your total power consumption by like 40 or 50%, something like that. Of course, there's significant infrastructure costs. And, because you're going to have to put trolleys on all the trucks and everything like that. In the case of, say, this particular mine, because of all the infrastructure stuff, it's kind of, but in this case, it wasn't regenerative braking in terms of they weren't putting it into batteries. As the truck's going downhill, he's hooked up to the trolley, putting electricity into it. So the trucks going uphill that are hooked up to the trolley are getting the power out of it. And as I say, it worked, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it widely used. So there's probably, I say, probably just not efficient in terms of the infrastructure costs and things like that. Well, also, a lot of the new trucks, they aren't diesel electric anymore. It wouldn't work on a standard diesel mechanical drive truck. And I say this was, Jean-Francois on the big heavy duty haul trucks they used to. They used a lot of retarding braking, but I can see that in a motor vehicle, a standard motor vehicle, it would be different because the old diesel electrics, they had some tricky stuff to them. Absolutely, Jean-Francois. And that made it in that application sometimes useful. But now, because the energy losses in the diesel electric system are more than a diesel with a mechanical drive. I'm not sure. Does anyone know of any diesel electric haul trucks out there? That in the heavy haulage anymore? I think all those big trucks are mechanical drive now, but I'm not sure. It's a good question. Okay, let me see. Cat heavy. Oh, let's not go cat. Let's go someplace else. What makes another big heavy haul truck?
Kubota?
I don't think Kubota does.
I know Kia does in Korea,
but no, Jean-Francois, that would kind of suck, but oh well. So let's see. Liebherr. Mining trucks, Liebherr. Let's see what we got here. Decline. Payload class. 240 ton. Okay, let's see. The T264, high horsepower engine, efficient Liatronic plus AC drive system, powerful electric wheel motors. Yep. Okay. So yes, they're still making diesel electric trucks. Edison's making diesel electric logging trucks, huh? Well, it's not only the clutches, but the brakes themselves. Say you can take an electric motor, turn it into a generator, run it through a resistance thing, and then just dissipate the heat with very little mechanical wear. You know. Apparently, they're still making brand new ones. Honey Bunny, Liebherr at least does. But the big diesel locomotives, they've got not regenerative braking, but they have retarding. Dynamic retarding is what they call it. And it has a lot of power. The main thing is it doesn't wear and it doesn't get overheated like mechanical brakes do. However, it has a limit. And if you exceed that limit, you're kind of screwed because you now don't have enough brakes to slow down anymore. That train, for example, that crashed in, what was it? Not Bakersfield. San Bernardino years ago. They were going down the grade, and I believe they actually had more load on than they had been told. And so they didn't have a sufficient retarding capacity. And, basically the shoe brakes are essentially an emergency brake. They're parking brakes, so to speak. And that was it. I mean, 20 or 30 minutes before the crash, they basically kissed their asses goodbye because they knew they were just not going to be able to hold it. It was just not going to work. And I say it's one of the engineers died, the others lived, but several people in the neighborhood that they plowed into died. And then, strangely enough, a couple months later, more people died because when they crashed, they damaged a petroleum products pipeline that went undetected. And so a couple months later, it ruptured and spewed flaming gasoline all over the neighborhood. You know? Really, Jean-Francois? Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me a bit. Maybe they're getting better materials now. And so what's the new design pads? Have they got asbestos-free pads that are reasonable at this point? Because the regulators always change stuff to make things safer, but they never look at the secondary changes that may make us less safe. There's always something there. When every time you improve safety in one place, you usually add a vulnerability somewhere else. So it's always a balancing act. Burnt Kevlar is more carcinogenic than asbestos, huh? Wonderful. Well, asbestos will kill you, but let's put something in it that'll kill you better. A new improved product. That's about right. Yeah. There was what was that? Some guy had an article that the FAA came out with a new regulation that this applied to piston engine aircraft, that they needed to have the those are mainly parking brakes. You know, they're auxiliary braking system. They're not the main retarding system going down a grade, honey bunny. But yeah. But anyhow, so they put a thing out. You're going to have your head bolts retorqued every so often. And somebody did the math. It says whenever you torque head bolts, there's a chance that you screw things up. Now, if you torque it more often, the chances are you're going to screw it up more often. So the actual frequency of accidents should go up. Yeah, they're also there for parking and a few other things. Absolutely, honey bunny. I think they were already doing like 40, 45 miles an hour. I think they were also honestly trying to do their best. They knew if they jumped off the train, they couldn't do anything more to help. So I'm not sure. Interesting, Jean-Francois. Of course it was a huge racket. Whenever you have people advertising on the radio, it's a racket. In Arizona, they had a thing where if you wanted to change your vehicle from its it's liquid hydrocarbon fuel to propane, which burns cleaner, and you lived in, I think it was Maricopa and Pima County, then the government would give you like a $5,000 credit on the purchase of a new vehicle or whatever. And the cost of actually having your car converted was like $3,000 or something. So people were buying cars just for the conversion, especially if you bought like a used car, just like do that, and you get a $5,000 rebate. Okay, fine. It was so badly designed that within 6 months, the governor had to call an emergency session of the legislature to shut this program down before the entire state went bankrupt. I mean, it was, and they literally had like a week or 10 days before the state is toast because they gave these really substantial incentives. And people would go down and go, okay, so let's see if I buy this brand new car, I can get $5,000 off by having the option to drive it on propane, even though I can still drive it on the gasoline or the diesel. Okay, $5,000 off, I'll take it. Yeah. Yep. Huge brakes on jumbo jet are pure beryllium, and they turn into vapor every time the plane lands. I don't know, but I do know that they get really, really hot, honey bunny. It's amazing. Yeah. Well, of course, as soon as somebody, I don't know if you know this, but for the longest time, McDonald's used beef tallow to make their French fries with. And it works very well. You can run it at higher temperatures than vegetable oils. And it tastes better. And so they worked for years to try and find an alternative. And once they finally found an alternative that was vegetable oil based, now they started making a big deal about, well, we've got vegetable oil and stuff to try and force everyone else to change when they weren't ready. They hadn't done all the research and everything. There wasn't a product on the market.
Brian's calling.
So
Hi, Ryan.
you really need to have an alternative before you ban the old stuff.
Fine,
And
I'm gonna take this in the bathroom so we can talk about it.
One of the smartest, ruthless things a company does is come up with a better way of doing it and that nobody else can do because you got a patent or whatever, and then make the government ban the old thing. It's like, wow, guaranteed money here. We're the only ones that can do that. Happens all the time. Best politicians money can buy. So I've seen numerous things throughout the years where, the regulators screw things up. To some extent, I would agree with that, Jean-Francois. I haven't kept up on the research, but pretty much. Yep. We have no, I don't think we have any evidence that the new chlorofluorocarbons work better than the old chlorofluorocarbons when it comes to the ozone hole, but I'm not sure. Again, they're always making laws well before the research is done. And it always seems to be pressed by the person who happens to have the new answer. Gee, how surprising is that? Anyhow, it also gets pretty dangerous when they do stuff like, we're going to ban fossil fuel vehicles. There was one just today. Jeff Taylor, Britain, I think it was Scotland. They did a study and they found out that now that they've, I don't think they have to do that quickly, honey bunny. That's real important, Tricky. Keep it that way. If you had to replace the brakes every landing, it would get really, really expensive in terms of downtime. Okay. Now, maybe every aborted takeoff or something like that. I know they really have to let them cool when they pull a stunt with one of those airliners where they overheat the brakes. But anyhow, it gets pretty rigid. But in Scotland, since they've implemented the new low pollution vehicle regulations, they have the monitoring has shown that fine particulates, might have been nitrogen oxides too, is they went up since they put in the restrictions, so that only fancy vehicles, because the major cause of these things isn't passenger cars, it's public buses. So if you're not driving your car, you're riding the bus. Of course they do, honey bunny. The old name was bad. The new name is good. Yes. Happens all the time. That's right. Yeah, they sure would. Yeah, sand MSDS. That would be pretty funny. Also, and this is, gosh, when I was a teenager, my chemistry class teacher read this. Some guy went around his high school, and this was in the 70s when the environment just started becoming a big thing, circulating a petition to ban dihydrogen monoxide, because dihydrogen monoxide is found in a wide variety of products. It's ubiquitous in the environment. It's a major component of acid rain, and large quantities were known to cause respiratory arrest in human beings. So we need to ban dihydrogen monoxide. And so people would sign the petition, you know? Sweet honey bunny. So all these people would ban, sign the thing, ban dihydrogen monoxide, which of course is water. Yeah, water will kill you. So will salt. So will anything in sufficient quantities. But yeah, I would imagine sand would be one of those things that it's not safe. Yeah, as Eva would say, no shit, Sherlock. What were they going to ban nitrogen in, Jean-Francois? Just out of curiosity. What were they going to ban nitrogen in? They were nitrogen compounds without specifying which nitrogen compounds are. Like they're using just, but yeah, makes sense. Absolutely. Your workplace cannot contain nitrogen. Okay. This is going to get interesting. And as the Apollo 1 astronauts can tell you, kind of hazardous. Jesus. Oh, never underestimate the power of human stupidity. Of course. I'm surprised they haven't officially declared a 40% across the board reduction in population. Yeah, absolutely, Jean-Francois. Oh, but anyhow. So, weekly report. We got a sample of the, a big sample of the mystery dump, which we've got sorted, crushed, split, and ready for further testing at the ranch. We have we're teaching Eva to efficiently hand pan for microfine gold so that she can do some loaming tests out there at the top of the hill area to see if we can figure out what the heck these bozos were using as their key minerals to choose where they're going to dig. And that's about it at the moment. We got the Infinity Prospecting VDR mini sluice we're going to be setting up to test on the mystery dump material, because it clearly has a lot higher ratio of gravity recoverable gold to non-gravity recoverable gold than Montana be. So that sounds about right, Jeff. This is not soil, but let's say what I was getting was 500 to 150 mesh out of this material. But this is ground material. How much do you need, Jean-Francois? Because let's say I got, I don't know, more than 1,000 pounds of material right now. Not sure what the grade is. Yeah, I'll bet. Well, it would be nice if we could get the bureaucrats to operate under zero nitrogen conditions. That would be nice. Really, Jean-Francois? Oh, that figures. Well, maybe you could swing on by and pick some up, or somebody, if you have somebody who's coming in the general neighborhood, they could swing by and pick it up, maybe. Hey, Brian, how's it going? That would be nice. I wish. That'd be nice, Jean-Francois. I don't know if they're looking for that much. Let's see. 99 point what? So we got 7 billion times 0.0015. 0015. And that would be, yeah, maybe. That's still several million. Let's see. Let's 7. I don't think it'll do it. No, it won't. I'll just have to add 3 zeros times 0.0015. 10,500,000. I don't know. I think that's a little more than they're trying to cut things back, but there you go, Rock. Yeah, but let's say that I agree. 500 million is the number I've seen. That number she came up with was 10 million. Well, they don't need it for mental functioning, that's for sure. That may be the only thing that saves us from AI, Jean-Francois. I don't know if people have ever lived in peace, Shaggy. I think conflict is a natural human condition, but we can certainly do better than we are right now. Yeah, I know. I'm kind of concerned too. You know, you don't want to let it out of the box. You don't know which way it's going to go. I have no confidence we'll be able to control it. Because by its very nature, it can think a lot faster than we can. Yeah, if it can manipulate reality in large amounts without human intervention, then we could have a problem. Oh, yeah. I agree with that. I mean, what's his name? Musk was saying we need to,
I mean, it would not be a very long.
we really need to
do that.
slow down, stop, and think about this for a bit. And one of the problems with having competition is there's always somebody who's willing to push the limits to try and gain an advantage. That makes it very, very difficult. So I don't know. It's one of those things. It's kind of like nuclear weapons. Once you let the genie out of the bottle, you never know where it's going to end. That might be true. They actually said 5 million max. Okay. It wouldn't surprise me, honey bunny. You take care, Rock Butcher. Thanks for all the help. I appreciate it. You're a lot better at some of this stuff than I am, and I really do appreciate the help. What is loaming? Okay, Jeff. Loaming is where you take a series, take care, Rock, take a series of samples over an area, and generally it refers to panning them. So let's suppose, like in the case of Top of the Hill, is this visible? Okay, Top of the Hill, we have it looking top down on it now. Here's the base of the hill, and you have a series of trenches. And holes like this all over the frickin' hillside. Okay? And the material basically looks the same. It's just looks like the sedimentary rock. The color is the same, texture is the same, etc. We've only found one place like down here where we actually had some quartz. That's where we had that quartz cluster Eva found. Now that is a significant showing of quartz. Okay? So, but that's really unusual here. Okay? So the question is, why did they dig these trenches? You go to the next hill over, there's no trenches. You go this way, no trenches. What's up with that? So the question is, why did they pick the particular spots they did? Now, it might have been that they just walk along taking a series of soil samples like every 10 feet and then hand pan them. And then they get a hit here, they get a hit here. Well, then they go around it to see where the gold is. And they get another hit here, and they get a hit here. Well, then they're going to go uphill, and they're going to try here and there, and they keep working, trying to figure out where there's gold on the hill and where it's coming from. If you had a large deposit, let's say you had a vein, and these are contour lines, so this is your hill, like this, and you had a vein running here. Okay? If you're loaming around the hill, you're going to get a hit here and here. So then generally you're going to go uphill. Then you're going to get big hit here, smaller hits here. Well, you keep going. And you get, now you're starting to define this structure here, because the soil over is going to tend to be enriched. At this point, you might start digging a hole here and saying, okay, what's beneath this soil? And by doing that, you can find deposits. And one way you can even do it a little better than this, let's suppose you got a creek running down here. Well, get a little dry. So if the creek's going this way, I don't know what's going on there, and you pan here and you get a hit, and you pan up here, you get a hit like this. No hit. So now you know, so you're just going upstream, you're following the gold upstream, and you wind up right at this vein. That's loaming. And it's a fairly efficient technique if you're low tech, you know. And so that's what loaming is all about, Brian. Brian, or no, it was. Goodness, you guys got me confused here. Jeff, I think it was, wasn't it? So anyhow, that's what loaming is all about. Okay. It's very low tech. It doesn't require much except a reasonably skilled person and a pan and some water. And you can do some pretty good research if you got the time. Absolutely, it does work. There you go, Jeff. Yeah, see, that's the whole thing. So if you're down in this drainage here and you found gold, like Alan Robertson, also in Montana here, he found this good spot in a creek. And by the way, in Montana, we don't have creeks, we have cricks. Now, he found it in the creek. And so, assuming that it was claimable, you'd keep heading up the creek and find good spots that are going to be gold traps and pan that. If it's there, keep going up and up and up. Eventually, it'll probably change dramatically at some point if you have a decent sized ore body in the drainage. And at that point, you start on both sides panning uphill and follow it up. And then again, when you run out on the hill, okay, the ore body is in this area here. It makes it pretty easy to, with relative precision, localize a surface outcrop. You know, it's not going to do much if it's completely buried, but if it's a surface outcrop that's covered with vegetation, soil, stuff like that, and it's not obvious. For example, if it's a good hard quartz outcrop in shale, it's going to stick out. You're going to have, it's really going to outcrop. And then you have to just look, unless it's, you know, like Oregon where you can't see anything, and you'll be able to see there's a vein right there. But if it's highly mineralized, brecciated quartz that had so much iron in it that it's just falling to pieces, and you got plants on there, you may notice a different type of plant growing right there, or you may notice a different soil color, But in general, you won't. The organics are going to cover all that stuff up. You're not going to notice the color of the soil when you've got a lot of rain because it's just covered with leaves and litter and things like that. Yeah, it does that, honey bunny. And so you use all these different techniques to try and identify there's something different there, and it's different in a good way or a bad way or whatever. That's the purpose.
I'm going to be turning on this light for a minute.
And that's, so you just use all these tricks, and hopefully, if you're around an ore body, it'll give itself away. Now, a lot of times, you just ain't around an ore body. So you're using all the tricks in the world. It's like going to pick up chicks, and there's no chicks there. It ain't going to work. Sorry, not happening here. It's the YMCA. But loaming is one of those techniques, and Eva's she's not practiced in it, and so it's hard on her elbow, on her wrist. She doesn't have the strength and the endurance to do it easily. And then she's just got to get some practice too. It'll go a lot faster as time goes on.
Well, I also have my new plan in mind.
Yeah. But hopefully we'll find something that we can correlate with those workings and say, okay, now we can see what they were looking for. But as of now, it's pretty darn confusing. And I mean, pretty darn confusing. So that's frustrating, but that's life. And at least the weather's nice and there's no grizzly bears. It is a bit steep at times, though, darn it. Yeah, rocks are a lot easier to diagnose than deep soils. I remember one time my brother and I were looking for a portal up in Oregon. And oh my goodness, good luck. I mean, you couldn't see 10 feet. It was ridiculous. They never got the mining rights to your mine claims, huh? Well, that was a heck of an oversight on their part that you're taking advantage of. Good for you. Oh. Yeah, in southern Arizona, it was a lot easier to pick out the geology. Here, even though the soils are fairly thin, it's a lot more difficult. Good luck, Tricky. Keep it safe and
kiss the babies.
Kiss the babies. Oh. Well, I'm going to have to take a short break fairly soon here, so why don't we see if anybody has any more questions or anything at this point? And we'll see whether we'll have Eva take over.
No, give me a minute. I'm doing housewifely type shit.
It's hard to tell, Brian. A lot of the records are either gone or hard to find, hard to locate.
Or in storage.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to tell. We're frustrated here because a lot of the documents we'd like to look at are in storage while they build a new frickin' history museum.
Only you would complain about people building a new museum.
I don't mind them building a museum. It's just, could you please frickin' don't hide everything away in the process? Get a warehouse somewhere. Anyhow.
Well, they have a warehouse. They also have a whole bunch of basements and scattered random shit everywhere.
Probably.
And they can't just let anybody go wandering through all the scattered random shit. Okay, hurry back. Whew.
Interesting.
Hello. They put the posts in at 2 a.m. in some of the same locations. Good grief. Huh. Wow, Tricky, that is crazy.
Well, they're really hard workers over there.
A real railroad bridge, huh? Hi, Tricky. Well, Shaggy, my back is a little bit sore. My elbows are at about 90% here. Hi, Brian. Oh, and I do have a plan for this loaming thing. This past week, I was being an utter and complete idiot because he didn't tell me what to do. I do know the theory, but I had not conducted this type of thing before myself. So stupid me, okay? I've got this big pile of stuff that I have to take a sample of. Well, I mapped out where I wanted to put my sample. That was fine. Then I go over there with my bucket and my little screen, and I carefully collect my first about cubic foot of material and screened it down to get my sample. Then I took the bucket back over to the panning area and spent some time panning, and then went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth 10 times. Okay. On time number 10 of going back and forth, the little voice speaks up in the back of the goddess's head and says, "You know, you've been an utter idiot all day. So next week, I'm going to take my collection of half-gallon Ziploc bags." He accidentally bought half-gallon Ziploc bags, which made him very, very angry because we never ever use half-gallon Ziploc bags. So I'm going to take these half-gallon Ziploc bags, and I'm going to grid out my area for loaming, and I'm going to number those damn bags. I'm going to collect all of my samples at once, and then I'm going to take them all back to my panning area, pan them at once, and write all my notes at once. Efficiency. Every once in a while, the goddess has a blonde moment. That was hours of blonde moments. So I think I've used up all my blonde moments for the last 9 months. Just saying. Honey Bunny says she's vegetating and watching her iron carbonate settle out.
Oh, the excitement.
Sounds good to me. Well, yeah, that would be a good thing, Honey Bunny. But yeah, I mean, basically, I was an absolute idiot. I looked at it and I'm like, I have a bunch of unused half-gallon Ziploc bags, and they'll be the right size to hold the sample that I need. And I have a Sharpie and I know how to use it. And I can collect all of my samples at once, put them in my bucket, take them right back to my panning area, get the whole thing done at once, and write my notes, and boom. Yeah, Jeff, if he doesn't steal all my buckets again, you're right. 2 half buckets will carry easier than 1 full one. Just saying. Anyway, here he is. So we now have a use for those half-gallon Ziploc bags, unless you threw them away in a fit of anger.
No, but there's very few left.
When I told you.
Yep.
Oh, we have quart ones too. It'll work.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Anything else running around out there? I hope Brian's mind works pretty good.
He's building railroads.
Yep. That ladder track I built for Montana Bee seems to work pretty well. But you still have to use at least a 3x4 or an old rough cut 2x4 every 5 feet for support. You can wedge that into the walls, no problem. Oh, good. I'm tired. Anyhow, well, I like to let her use her head because, first of all, believe it or not, I don't know everything. And sometimes some people come up with stuff better than me, but they don't do it if you tell them, here's the way you do it. And I want to see you do it that way. But also, if I'd suggested that she do Ziplocs or something like that, Jean-Francois, is that activated carbon you're talking about? If it is, it should be able to be reactivated. Is it still active? Depends probably on how well it's been sealed. Yeah, but you wouldn't just, as far as I know, you don't just heat it, you autoclave it, But yeah, I believe they usually autoclave it. Don't know about how well vacuum would work. Bet you the internet does.
Well, what exactly is activated charcoal in the first place?
It's a carbon that's been treated with high pressure steam, I believe, and basically cleans up all the active, essentially binding sites, and that's it, activated. But I think that's the way they.
So you have to have special equipment to turn regular charcoal into activated charcoal.
Let's see. How do you activate carbon? Let's see. It is processed to have small, low volume pores to increase the surface area. The activation is analogous to making popcorn. Activate carbon usually drive waste problem husk uses. Industrial, medical, analytical, chemistry, environmental. No, I don't want what you can do with it. Activated carbon is produced by carbonation sources. You produce one of the following products. Physical activation. Source material is developed using hot gases. Air is then introduced to burn out the gases, leading a graded screen and dedusted form of activated carbon. It's generally done by using one carbonization, pyrolysis at 600 to 900 C in an inert atmosphere with argon or nitrogen. Then activation, exposed to oxidizing temperatures, oxygen or steam at temperatures above 250 degrees C, usually in the range of 6 to 1200 C. The activation is performed by heating the sample for 1 hour in a muffle furnace at 450 C in the presence of air.
Oh, really? So I can make it in a muffle furnace when I get one?
Apparently so.
So then the fairy god scientist needs to send me a muffle furnace.
Uh-huh. Okay. So, yeah, it doesn't say you have to use steam. Just high temperature. Well, it's not only that, but if you make a mistake, honey bunny, the correct answer will stick in your head stronger than if you're just taught how to do it the right way, so to speak.
So you're implying that you knew the right way and you decided to let me look like an idiot all day.
No. First of all, the main thing I was looking for you to do is practicing the panning. Secondly of all, I was curious to see what you would come up with and how well it worked. 10 to the -6 torr. Well, yeah, that's going to be a little difficult. High pressure. That's what I've heard. Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
I'm getting tired. Yeah, I'm sure a tokamak would operate under a pretty hard vacuum. You know, what's your opinion on when they're actually going to have functional fusion power, Jean-Francois? I was reading one. Well, I think it was an article where they were talking about. Well, there's a company that's working on a fusion rocket to get to Mars and stuff like that, and they're actually going to start running tests in 2025. And it's like, yeah, they're going to build their first tokamak and start running some tests on it in 2025. It's a long way from having. I mean, we still don't have fusion power. We're still not making a substantial excess energy, and certainly nothing I've heard of anything nearly light enough to go on a rocket, unless you built it in space. But even then, that's going to really use up a lot of thrust. It was like today I saw a headline. It was Russia blows up U.S. Russia blows up 4 American boats in the Black Sea. And I thought, wow, that could be serious. Then I go to the articles. There were 4 American-made landing craft that the Ukrainians were using. It's like, man, that sucks. Yeah. For Jean-Francois, it's one of those things that in theory, it's pretty straightforward. I won't say simple, just straightforward. But in practice, yeah, the details will kill you. It simply is so much harder than the basic theory would make it seem. Well, all you got to do is get it to 250 million degrees C with, pressures of this and confine it for that and blah. It's like, yeah, try doing it. And that's, it's very, very frustrating watching reporting in some cases nowadays. Some cases it's bias, other cases just complete freaking ignorance. And sometimes they're just doing clickbait,
Well, yeah. Eyes on their stuff.
I say it's just extremely frustrating at times. It's like with the electric vehicle thing. It's like, okay, basic question: where are you going to get the power? Yeah. Well, they had a 1-inch piece of copper tube 5 feet long that they used in the tokamak that outgassed water vapor for a week just from having it letting it sit on the floor for a day. That's true too, Honey Bunny. But the thing about, the investors thing, they get more out of fusion than they put into it. Well, not actually, because they got more energy released from the reaction than the laser energy they put into the reaction. But here's the funny thing. The entire facility used a lot more energy to deliver that laser pulse to the target than the laser pulse itself. By the time you figured out all the other stuff that was keeping that facility running, and I'm not talking about offices, I'm talking about the whole facility, that did it, and it still hadn't even reached what I would call break even. You know, yeah, that's because, I agree, Honey Bunny. A lot of this is simply funding. They're mining investors. You know, we've been doing it for millennia, us gold miners. But fusion, that's the new method. Yeah, I say the tokamak, again, sounds simple, but from what I understand, it is really tough to contain the plasma. Um, and that's the big problem, you know. But I haven't seen anyone come up with a good thing. There was some guy saying they had this, whiz bang idea of. I think it was basically they were using like two electrical confinement things to send plasma, into a central chamber and smack the plasma together. And they were saying how this is going to be a game changer. Sooner or later, there will be a game changer. But until then, yeah, hydrocarbons, Honey Bunny. Jean Francois says when the plasma actually touches the wall of the tokamak because of containment failure, because the magnetic fields are kind of unstable, especially as the plasma itself generates magnetic fields and is influenced by magnetic, modifies the magnetic field. So it's like trying to hold on to mercury, so to speak. It ain't easy to do. He says when the plasma hits the wall, because of instability, metal vaporizes all over the place and contaminates the whole assembly.
Oh, that doesn't sound very good.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I say and in order to compete with current energy production methods, it's going to have to be routine, reliable, cost effective, blah, blah, blah. And they're nowhere close. They aren't even in the 1800s when it comes to internal combustion gasoline piston engines yet when it comes to fusion. They got a long, long way to go. Again, sooner or later, somebody may make a real amazing breakthrough. A single flake of dandruff raises the pressure from 10 to the negative 7th to 10 to the negative 6th torr for quite some time. A fingerprint is even worse. Yeah, fusion is the new unobtainium. Yeah, pretty much, Honey Bunny. Say, do the math. If it don't pencil out, don't implement. It's time for more testing.
Great green boondoggles pencil out except nuclear.
Exactly. And the fact that they won't do nuclear leads me to believe they're not worried about the climate and or people and or both. Cool, Honey Bunny. Okay, well, I think we'll call it a night unless somebody's got some more questions or something.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me, Jean-Francois, at those extraordinarily low pressures, things are weird, and that's just the way it is. You're in an entirely different world, so to speak.
You mean like close to vacuum?
Hey, Goldstream, how's it going? Yeah, Jeff, that's it. To say when you add everything up, it doesn't pencil out. Really? Jean-Francois says that at 10 to the -7 torr, which is atmospheres, copper can be folded tens of thousands of times without breaking.
How do you get... Never mind.
Yeah. Well, good, Goldstream. I'm glad things are getting better. What happened?
I'm not even going to try to get that shit out.
He says because there's no oxygen atoms inserting in the bend zones.
I'm just wondering how you get things to that negative of pressure in the first place.
It's tricky. Where the heck's Jim been? Up on the mountain, I guess. I'm not sure. I only have one sighting in the last 3 weeks. Oh, that's right. 1 torr is 1 millimeter of mercury. That's right. What's an atmosphere? 660 torr? 760 millimeter. Okay. So add another 2 to that negative there. Yeah. Roughly. We're talking, okay, Jean-Francois, compared to interplanetary space, what is that pressure? I presume it's probably less than interplanetary space, but I'm not sure. Um, 10 to the -8th, he thinks. So it's a little bit more gas than interplanetary space. Honey Bunny says, good night, Eva.
Good night.
Yeah, my memory is reliably unreliable. Yeah, mine was that way a while back, but it's getting more reliably unreliable. You can ask whatever her name is over there. Anyhow, okay. I think I'm going to call it a night here. Got busy schedule to do until the snowfall. So hopefully we'll have lots of interesting stuff, but some things will be confidential. So there may be, the occasional week where you don't really see much in the way of videos. Yeah, it all just depends on how many dimensions of space. It's like the superstring theory. They're saying we can explain reality with superstring theories, and you can also explain 10 to the 500 other realities too. The problem is you got absolutely no way of understanding why this one is what you're seeing instead of one of the other 10 to the 500th. And to give you an idea how big a number 10 to the 500th is, there's, I think, something like 10 to the 90th subatomic particles in the universe, or some insane number like that. So yeah, it'll explain anything. Any theory that explains anything doesn't explain anything in particular, That's entirely possible, Jean-Francois. I want to move to another reality. I think we're all going to someday. What was that? What was that? It was George Carlin. Something about, we'll find out what happens after you die when you do. Suicide is for people who can't wait to find out, or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not in a big hurry because I got a lot of stuff to do here first. But that's it, An attempt for a finitistic non-Archimedean theory of elementary particles by Friedwart Windberg. Wow. The Planck ether hypothesis. I'm going to say, I have no idea. Whenever you get anywhere close to that, you got to do higher math. And my higher math is about as good as my electronics. You take care, honey bunny. Oh. So I will call it a night. And as Honey Buddy says, happy prospecting and keep it safe out there. Thank y'all for showing up. End stream. There it is. End.